Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I'm going to be showing you a deck which nobody expected to be good. Which it turns out actually is good. It's the new Slurpuff. I have heard nobody talking about the new Slurpuff. The video I did about the new Slurpuff has, let's say, not proven to be one of my more popular new card analyses. But ladies and gentlemen, the new Slurpuff is here to say, hey, I'm actually pretty gosh darn good. Now, we should probably start off looking at Slurpuff, really, shouldn't we? It's got one attack that we care about. For a single fairy energy, it does 110 damage if the defending Pokemon is confused. Now, to be fair, it does technically have a first attack, but it's just confusion. So no, we don't, just ignoring that entirely. One fairy energy, 110 damage if they're confused. That is spectacularly efficient. If we're looking at stage 1 Pokemon for a single energy, we're looking at somebody like Granbull. And look, Granbull does 160. I ain't arguing that this does more damage than Granbull. But I am arguing that Granbull having to empty its hand completely every turn is far more restrictive than Slurpuff's confusion. And incidentally, we can get confusion going really easily. I'll show you how we're going to do it in just a moment. Now, you are actually hitting a few relevant Pokemon for weakness. Naganadel is seeing quite a bit of play at the moment. You'll get an easy one-hit KO on that. And the new Reshiram and Zekrom, you won't, but you'll be doing 220. You'll be getting an easy 2-hit KO. Honestly, one of the biggest issues with this particular deck is that you're actually free-hit KOing most Tag Team GXs. But you're free-hit KOing with confusion. And your opponent only plays so many switching cards. Yes, there are a bunch of decks out there at the moment that play Switch and play Tate of Liza, but there are only so many of them in the deck, and if you're confusing them every single turn, and you will be, there will be there'll be turns fairly early on in every game where they just have to accept the confusion. They will be able to retreat sometimes, but they won't always have enough energy to waste. They're going to be flipping for confusion. And if you flip for confusion and flip aheads, life is good. If you flip for confusion and flip tails, then your attack fails and you take free damage counters to yourself. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a rather large problem. And that's how you end up 2-hit KOing tag teams. All you need is them to fail a flip. And half the time they are going to fail the flip. They are not going to have switching cards all game. You'll find the odd deck playing stuff like Cobalion GX with Rainbow Energy, which can get around confusion. But as it stands at the moment, those kind of strategies are pretty rare. Incidentally, if you play against something like Cobalion that blocks special conditions, you lose. Because you don't do any damage at all. So try and avoid that, would ya? So I'm talking about getting confusion on. How do you get confusion on? And it is a combination between Tapu Lele and Magearna. Tapu Lele has a lovely ability whereby if you attach a Fairy Charm to it, the defending Pokemon is now confused. Nice! That'll do it quite nicely. We are playing a bunch of Fairy Charms. We'll get to the Fairy Charms in a little bit. But then we've got Magearna. Once during your turn before you attack, you may put a Pokemon tool card attached to one of your Pokemon into your hand. Which means that you attach to Tapu Lele, the defending Pokemon is confused. And then the next turn you use Magearna to pick it up and attach it to Tapu Lele and the defending Pokemon is confused. It allows you to do that every single turn. Until you end up with confusion every single turn. It is absolutely suffocating for your opponent to be having to deal with confusion literally every single turn. Is so difficult to actually come back from. And there's a lot of decks out there that just frankly won't be able to. There are a lot of decks out there that cannot deal with being confused every single turn. And that's what you do. The 110 damage is fine, but honestly, it's 110 damage combined with confusion that makes this a viable deck. The damage alone is lovely. It's a nice little bonus. But really here it's confusion. And 110 isn't quite enough, but then your opponent keeps flipping tails on confusion, and all of a sudden it does become enough. You are going to force your opponent to waste so many resources trying to avoid flipping for confusion, and then you're going to get to a stage where they're out of resources, and they have to flip for confusion. And at that stage, ladies and gentlemen, you're in a very good position. Now, in terms of other Pokemon here, there really isn't very much. You're playing a Stage 1 deck, so you're playing Ditto. It acts as a 5th basic. Cool. And then you're playing a 2-2 Zeb Striker line. This is just a little bit of extra consistency. Feel free to swap this for Pidgeotto if you like. But Pidgeotto can be very vulnerable to things like Espeon and Deoxys' GX attack, or Ultra Necrozma's GX attack, so that is a reason to go for Zeb Striker over something like Pidgeotto. Cool. Now, in terms of trainer cards, obviously Japan is going to have a few that we don't have at the moment, but nothing which breaks the deck. There's a couple of cards we're missing that every deck is missing. In terms of Pokemon, nothing is rotating from this deck. Every Pokemon we want will be here post-rotation. But we are losing a few of the general trainers. The ones we're not losing, however, are the Fairy Charms. Now, it doesn't really matter which Fairy Charms you go for here. There are 5 in this particular deck. It depends on the meta. As far as I'm concerned, at the moment, the best Fairy Charms are Lightning, to deal with Pikachu and Zekrom, UB, to deal with stuff like Blacephalon and Naganadel, and Ability to deal with stuff like Mewtwo and Mew. There are others. I don't think they're seeing as much play. I don't think they are as good. But there are others out there if you so wish. And in a usual game, you'll have, let's say you're against Pikachu and Zekrom. When you're against Pikachu and Zekrom, you want Fairy Charm Lightning, but Fairy Charm Ability and Fairy Charm UB become essentially pointless cards. They're dead cards in your deck. They're not giving you any advantage. Except now, you can actually be attaching those to Tapu Lele to get the confusion going, so all of a sudden they're not dead cards in your deck. They are there and ready to go, and they are helping you out beautifully. That's one of the things I love about this deck. Now, if you're playing a whole bunch of Fairy Charms, might I suggest you play Adventure Bag? Adventure Bag lets you search for a couple of Pokemon tools. It is great in Fairy Charm decks because it means that you can find the particular Fairy Charm you need for the particular matchup rather easily. And while we're talking Fairy Charms, I'm going to be covering this in a bit more detail in a video in the near future, but can we all stop for a minute to realise how great Fairy Charms are at the moment? The ways to get rid of Fairy Charms are Faber, no one's playing Faber, and Lysander Labs. And firstly, Lysander Labs is really dropping in popularity, and secondly, not every deck can actually afford to play Lysander Labs. Ultra Beast decks are generally going to be playing Ultra Space, so you're going to be immune to them, and they are going to have no answer whatsoever. And by the time we get this deck, people are going to be playing Great Catcher far more than they're going to be playing Custom Catcher, and they aren't going to have any gusting. So if your opponent plays no Lysander Labs, and you get this on there, your opponent is going to have a really, really difficult time KOing any of your Pokemon, and that's kind of hilarious. As a side note here, we're also playing Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star because, well, it's your Prism Star Stadium. It increases your opponent's attack cost by 1 unless they're a fairy Pokemon. It's pretty gosh darned important, if I'm honest with you. This should be in every fairy deck, and it is. Now, in terms of the other trainers, it's the usual lot of trainers. It's what you would expect. It's how you're going to make every Stage 1 deck. We're losing stuff like Ultra Ball and Nest Ball, which is a bit of a pain for Pokemon search, but so is everybody. We're losing Guzma for gusting, but so is everyone. You've got Great Catcher, you've got Custom Catcher. And one of the biggest losses we actually see here is that we're losing Choice Band to the rotation. You see, Choice Band is relevant because you would be getting a one-hit KO on, say, Reshiram and Zekrom, whereas you're now not getting a one-hit KO on Reshiram and Zekrom. Of course, you could play Fairy Charm Dragon to give yourself immunity to them, and then be two-hit KOing, and that is a Fairy Charm to consider if you think that's going to be big in your meta. Like I've said, what you should really be doing with Fairy Charm is having a look at your local scene, seeing the decks people are playing, and then specifically trying to make sure that you've got the answers for that particular scene. That's what you should be doing here. I love this deck. Yes, you're missing a few cards, but you're not missing cards that other decks aren't missing. And you're hitting 110 for a single energy on a stage 1. It's not a deck that takes a huge amount of setup, and that means that you've got a huge advantage in terms of actually just getting rolling with the deck. There is a lot to like about this deck. Is it going to be the next great non-GX deck? I don't know is the honest answer. But I can tell you for absolute certain that there is a lot that I love about this deck, and it is one that you should keep your eye on. But I would very much like to know what you think about this deck, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWazzy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.